The designer of this game contacted me online and asked if I would be interested in seeing a copy of the game and doing a video about it. And I investigated the game and it seemed pretty fully developed to me, especially for a PnP game, and so I agreed to do that, and I'm bringing you the video now. I will say I don't know the designer. I did ask him to provide me with a copy of the game, and I'll be playing it with the copy that he made for me with the custom dice that were included. You can see them down here below. But aside from that, I'm not getting anything out of this. He did not ask me to say anything in particular, and I haven't discussed with him at all the content of what I'm going to say. What we're looking at here is the game setup. I'm sort of well, not mid-game, but this is a game in progress. I'm just sort of panning down to show you. This is a very large footprint game, and it's not going to be possible in the video for me to get everything into one shot, but I'm just sort of showing you here what we have with the playing area, and he has done extensive videos about every aspect of the game, almost too many videos, really, in a way, I think, about the game. So I'm going to do a light overview of the game components and then basically just show you the gameplay. The heart of the gameplay is the dice rolling, the dice placement. It's dungeon hack, it's a dice game, and it's implemented very effectively on that level, and that's what I'm going to focus on in the review. But for the review to make sense, if you haven't seen his videos, I'm just going to now give you a brief overview. What we're looking at here is the main playing area, and what is placed here are actually removable cards that represent your dungeon party. In this case, I'm playing with a cleric, a fighter, also known as the knight, a thief, and a wizard. And they all have special abilities on their cards that allow them to use various faces of the dice to implement various types of attacks or other effects in the game. You track their health along this track here, moving down toward the red skeleton, which is death, and beginning for the level 1 card or the level 1 character. There's only 2 levels in this game at this level of health. After you attain the second level, you can potentially move up to this level of health. Right now, we're showing the level 1 card, and as you level up, the abilities will increase. The cubes here represent the closeness to attaining the next level that each character is at, and if a character is responsible for eliminating a monster, they will get 1 experience level and move up. So right now, my fighter and my cleric are the closest to leveling up. My wizard hasn't gotten any experience yet, although I have been using some of the wizard's capabilities. I think I either forgot to do it or chose to give the experience to someone else, because you do have some choices. Over here on the right-hand side of the board, you see numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. These represent the attack levels of the various monsters that come in. And there are corresponding numbers 1 through 5 here over on the left. And this is where you place any types of encounters you may have. In this case, I have an existing trap that is out right here. One point to make that this hit the bottom here, in the course of the game, some of your characters can be placed in dungeon cells and you need to rescue them through a combination of dice. So when that happens, you place the cube for that, or another cube indicating that person here. Down here, I'm playing with the cleric, and the cleric can save these dice with the cross face to save up for certain blessings that can be used. And there is a special card here. This is actually just a color or a black and white Xerox. I think one of my kids or my cat took this card. I can't find it right now. So somewhere in the course of this video, you're going to see the actual component coming back. But this is a place on the board where you use to put dice that you're saving up. And then likewise, moving down, you will see that there is a spell book here, a level 1 spell book for our wizard. And the spell rules have changed. Again, this is a PnP game. I think the rules, for the most part, are pretty well executed, but they're a little bit in transition. And so I filmed part of this video using the older rules for spells, and then they changed a little bit, and I think, to my mind, changed to make it too easy to use the spells and take away some of the decision making. So I'll talk about this when we get to spells, but this is the spell book that's associated with the wizard. This, as I mentioned, is where you put the dice in regroup after you have used them. I've collected some magic items along the way, and those are down here. And then up the left side here, you'll see I'm building my dungeon and traveling through it. My party right now is represented by this red cube here up at the top. And as you pull in the tiles, they are coming from a pile that is, it's a little bit off my screen here. To save some space, I have all the dungeon tiles in one pile, but the designer suggests that you lay them out. There are different ones. CR stands for corridor. There are junction tiles. There are room tiles. There are a corridor room tiles. Oh, that's a CR, a corridor room. And, you're meant to lay them out and pull from them, but I just pick them up and pull what I need because this is already taking up a ton of space. And then finally, I have over here, this is what is known as the dungeon card phase that maps you through the dungeon so that you're pulling not a number of certain type of cards in a row. So it's mapped out what you should do. So right now, I will be pulling a junction card, and in the last turn, I pulled a card, a room, etc. And that basically covers the components. Although I'm seeing now here that this is actually a corridor, not a corridor room. So I have to reconcile this. I moved my gameplay in the middle of the video, and let's talk about the sequence of play before we get into the examples from the game. And you'll see I have found my Cleric Apprentice card, which is where I would be placing those dice. The first thing that you're going to be doing in a turn is drawing a dungeon tile following the card phase indicator here. So you'll put your party indicator on a spot and it will tell you what type of card tile to draw. You'll draw that from the pile and place it there. Each card tile is going to have some iconography on it, and it's going to indicate how many monsters come out, whether there's treasure represented, for example, by this chest, or traps. There could possibly be a door. So you would place those things. The monsters would come in over here. The traps would come in over here. And if you had treasure, as I do here, you have the card face down, so you don't yet know what it is, by the room or the tile, and once you clear that room, if you do so successfully, you are able to take that treasure and put it into your inventory for later use. The next thing that you do, and really the heart of the game, is rolling these custom dice, and when you do that, you then have some placement order of the dice. There are certain dice that you need to place first, and here are showing two of them here. On the upper right is your camp dice and die, and it is represented by a fire, like a fire pit icon. And when you get two of them, when you roll them, you must place them up there. And when you get two of them, you can put that cube onto the camp/rest area, which will allow you in a later phase of the turn, when you've cleared the whole room, to regain some health for your party. The second mechanic here that's sort of cool is this random monster. It's a dungeon, so there's going to be wandering monsters. Well, how do they appear? The way they appear is when you roll two of the dice with the monster face, and this is what the monster face looks like, you will then draw in a random or wandering monster in addition to whatever other monsters there may be. So in the middle of this turn here, I just have the one camp die placed. So that's not giving me any potential for rest, but I also only have the one wandering monster die placed, so I'm not getting any wandering monsters there. Finally, you can choose to place your blessing die or dice, if you have them, to potentially build up, to use items, or to use blessings to do things. You then place your other dice around near the icons where they are, and then you need to start making decisions about how you're going to use them, because ultimately what the game is about is dice management, so that you need to assess the possibilities that you have. Sometimes you'll do a dice roll and you'll have many possibilities, and sometimes you'll have fewer, but the possibilities for where you use the dice and how you use the dice are really the strength of this game, because it forces decision making, and the types of decisions are thematic, such as, will I choose to do a magic action that will result in more of an attack? Or will I choose to, instead of doing that, perhaps try to disarm this trap that is going to harm me? Or will I use a dice to increase a different attack action from a different character if I'm interested perhaps in having that character level up? So those are some of the decisions that happen in the course of that turn. And then once you have the dice placed, the really meat of the game happens, and the rest of the turn happens where you're placing the dice and using them to do the various actions that you can. And that's what I'm going to show right now. We're at the beginning of a new turn, and we'll see where things stand. Our health is pretty high now because we were able to camp from the last turn and we regained a couple of health. We have pulled most recently, I already did this off camera, this junction, and it has 3 monsters, a trap, which I've placed, a treasure here. The trap that came in isn't too bad. It's a fire and arrow trap. And the monsters, though, that came in are not great. We have this ghast, which has a health of 4 and does a pretty big attack, 1d6 plus 1 damage, and also the potential to do disease and additional damage. So that's something we want to deal with. This Darrow, 1d3 plus 1 damage, and sneak attack. Now, I don't know whether that means we don't roll for initiative with that. I'll have to check on that. And this giant centipede here, not too bad, 1d2 damage, and it has nothing special. In terms of where we stand, we've picked up a bunch of excuse me, treasures along the way. The first one we got, this short-range bow, unfortunately we can't use because our thief is not in the front line, and I can't find in the rules whether it tells you can regroup, so I'm assuming you cannot regroup. So basically I'm carrying this around, but I haven't been able to use it unless I'm misreading the rules, in which case I would regroup and try to use it. But I've got a magic dagger, which is useful, plus 2 damage. I just got this magic shield in the last turn, which seems to be free, and it gives me an additional, in this case, I'm playing with the fighter, so it gives me an additional shield per round. I haven't used this yet. I guess I need to roll a d6 before using it to see whether it breaks. And this potion of teleportation, which will allow me to teleport to any dungeon tile already on the table. Now, this brings me to a point where I find the rules a little confusing. I do have this dungeon, I'm up here, and I do have this dungeon tile way back here that is a quest tile where within the 3 areas are hidden pieces of a magical device, etc. But I haven't actually quite figured out how to use this, but the teleportation could come in handy because I'm going to end up having to come back here, I guess, at some point to fulfill that quest. So that is where things stand on the map. I haven't gained any experience level with the wizard. This may be a mistake, to be honest with you. I can't remember. Sometimes I forget to bump up the experience, but I'm moving the experience track from the bottom up. It made more sense to me than doing it from this level down. I don't know, it's unclear which is the right way, but my cleric has a lot of experience, and we're almost there to level 2 with the fighter, and the thief is moving up, and as you can see, the wizard is just where they are. So now we're going to roll the dice and see what we get. We'll do that off camera and just sort of try to move these on here and set up to do the placement, which is the key, of course, to the game. So we see that we're going to need to replace or to place first anything that is locked. So a camp die must be placed first. If we got any wandering monster dice, which we did, we got one right here. So we must place that next. And then we're going to look and see what we have and place them around. We have this healing hand we could use here, just sort of putting them in the area. Sometimes it's like I like to put them on top, but then if you put them on top, that can be confusing too. So I have this potential here. Okay. So here is the crux of the game, deciding what you're going to do. Let me set up with more stability and we'll talk about it. All right, it's a teeny bit difficult to get everything in one frame, but I'll do the best I can. What you can't see down here is I've got the cleric, the cross on the cleric thing right down here. So we have, if we place these I place these. They can be moved around a little bit. So what I've got right now here is the potential for a magic missile, because I already have these 2 magic hats. That's a 1 point of damage. I have these 2 swords. I really only need 1 to do a fighter attack. So I already know, since I can inflict damage on these 3 monsters, I'm going to have to roll for initiative. So that's something just for me to know. The trap here, again, requires 2 thief hoods or 2 shields. I only have 1 shield. This damage is 1 damage to both frontline characters. It's going to move down 1. That's not going to affect me this turn. I'm really not too worried about that because my health is pretty high. So I'm just, in my mind, not even going to try to deal with that. Again, I could be collecting this, using this on my cleric to start to collect some blessings to re-roll or to block some attacks. But maybe there's a better use for that, because I've got a healing here, but if I use this mace plus the healing here, I can then change the face of 1 unlocked die. Well, it says dice, 1 unlocked die. That's probably something I want to do, because I can get something out of that, and I don't really need to heal 1 point right now. So the question would then be, what would I want to change and to what? This 1 shield is not going to be helpful to me. So let's see. I could turn this into a spell book, place it here, and then possibly use a spell. The question is there any spell that, you can't see my spells right now, any spell that I could create with the rolls that I already have? And you know what? I think there is. Let me just, here's my spell book. A web spell. 1 monster is held in a sticky web for 2 rounds. This ghast here has a full attack of 1d6 plus 1 damage. Then, on a 1 to 2 on a d6, it could disease somebody plus 1 point of damage per turn. That's pretty bad. I mean, even the 1d6 plus 1 damage, I suppose, it could end up with a minimum of 2, but you could also end up to 7. So that's not great. So I could hold that in a web for 2 rounds if I did this. I use these 2. Let's just see. I use these 2 to change the face of an unlocked die. What I'm going to do is take this one, change it to a spell book, and then I'm going to take this, which is useless to me anyway here, because I don't have 2 of them, putting it here, and I could use then this magic hat. Now, of course, then I can't do the missile attack, but that's just 1 damage. This is going to be probably more powerful. So I could do that. I still have the capacity to inflict some damage, so I still have to roll for initiative, but then this would be out of it for 2 rounds. So if we do that, these 2, here, I'll show you, just bring this up here. These 2 go into the regroup. These 2 also going to regroup, and then this becomes immobilized for 2 rounds, and I'm going to mark that in this manner. So that's in a sticky web for 2 rounds. I've given up this. Now, the rules say I can then take this and use it for something else. That's an anomaly, and I'm not quite sure why that is the case, because as far as I know, you can't really use any other unlocked die for more than one purpose, but that seems to be pretty clearly what the rules say. But actually, there's nothing else I can use it for, because the only other thing would be a block here, but I don't have, I've got nothing. The only other die that hasn't been used is this one down here by the cleric, but again, I've got no other use for it. Can't help with the trap. I can't do any other. I don't have a hood, so I can't do that. Yeah. So we're left then somewhat defenseless, but we got rid of the worst of it. We've got to roll for initiative. Well, I only have this one dice out, so let me do that. Oh, they did get initiative on the Darrow, and this giant centipede did not. So this is going to attack us first. Let me put this back here. This is going to attack us first. We have no block, so... Well, I shouldn't have put that back. Okay. See the damage. 1d3 means 1, 2, 3, 1, 4, 5, 6, 2, plus 1. Of course, we rolled a 6, so that's 2 points of damage, plus 1 is 3. Then we need to do... Oh, you know what? I don't know what about the sneak attack. Maybe it would have attacked first anyway. Nevertheless, it won the initiative. So plus 2 damage on a 5 to 6. Okay, not plus 2. So we're getting a total of 3 points of damage from this Darrow. Because there are 3 attacking, we can spread it out. And I will just choose to go 1, 2, and 3. So that's that. We then can fight back. But what we're going to do is ignore that and apply our 1 damage to the centipede down here, just therefore getting rid of that. Using this, and I think pretty much that's all we can do for this round. I've been playing this turn for a number of rounds, and I'm coming back to show you live what's going on because I'm really low on health for my night, and I'm hoping that I don't die. So we're just going to see if we can get rid of this ghast. We've gotten his health down from 4 to 2. He had been in a web for a couple of turns. One of the things I keep forgetting to do, and just going to pull this up and show you. I keep forgetting that I have these magic items. So, for example, I've got this magic dagger here, which gives me plus 2 damage. I have a feeling I definitely could have used that. This short-range bow we've talked about, I can't really use because my thief is not in the front row, but I have a feeling I definitely could have used that. So maybe I'll be able to do that now. I'm going to be rolling 9 dice because I'm just tied up with 1 wandering monster dice. And what's tantalizing is I can heal 2 to the party if I can just get through this turn and get to the end of the round, because when the last phase of the round, the cleanup, I will be able to get 2 health back for everybody, but I'm not there yet. I can't seem to get rid of this thing. So the other thing, again, is if I roll another die with a wandering monster face on it, I'm going to have to add in something else. So I'm going to roll these dice. It's a little tough for me to do it on camera because I'm just afraid that I'm going to mess everything up. You're just going to have to trust me that I'm rolling what I'm rolling. So I rolled them, and I'm going to pull them up here. Let's see. Can you see? Let me move these things and pull these in, and just going to get a flavor of what happens actually in terms of the decision making of the game. I think you can see them all here. So at the last, well, and that's unfortunate. The last turn I cleared off. I had been kind of saving a cross, but I decided I wanted the extra die roll, and of course I rolled another one. So I rolled 2 of them actually. So, all right, we'll just place them here and see what. The main thing is I did not roll another monster. That's great. And placing them around here. Well, here is a healing. That's good potentially because I'm worried about this cleric, but we'll see. 1 more of these. That's unfortunately not going to be that useful to me. This is not looking particularly useful right now. There's a decision here. This seems to be, at least in the game so far, this seems to be the biggest sort of hand-wringing that I have, whether to use a heal or to put these together to give me the option of changing the face of something that is unlocked, and then kind of examining the various dice that I have around in terms of what that could possibly be. So here I might just take the heal. I don't know. I can inflict damage, so I'm going to need to roll for initiative, unfortunately. Depending on what happens here, this could really put me out, because the last time I rolled a 6, so I got the 1d6 plus 1 damage. I also rolled to poison my wizard, who is now getting plus 1 damage per round until that's cured. I certainly could use that here, but I'm not, because the wizard has full health at the moment, so I'm going to have to just let that slide and use this to heal somebody else. There was a little ambiguity for me here on the plus 1 damage a turn. I'm thinking that's in addition to the disease card, so I'm going to have that be happening too, although that's a teeny bit ambiguous to me, because I'm not sure why that would just not be part of the disease. I guess it's extra disease. I don't know. My magic dagger, I'm not getting the right die for it, and the shield here, this is free, so I can potentially get an additional defense, but I don't have, that's not going to help me here, because I would need 1 shield on my own, which I don't have. And again, we talked about the bow. Teleportation is not going to help, so I can use this if I want the blessing to re-roll 2 dice. I could do that. I could decide to re-roll, say, these 2, which aren't helping me at all, or I could re-roll one of these, which isn't helping right now, with the hope of getting, again, he's down to 2, so if I have the initiative and I can come up with 2 attacks, I could just get rid of him and maybe save myself. I've got 1 here. I've got 1 already. So what I probably want to focus on is choosing some dice to re-roll that could potentially give me 1 more attack to just get rid of him if I win initiative, and then I'm good. Actually, I'm done. I can rest up and I'm good. I'm not really sure anything else at this point, given the configuration, is what I want to do. So let me give it a little bit more thought about which dice, because as I read it, what I'm able to do is to reroll any 2 dice. So I think I can examine them to see what potentially I could be getting. So I'm going to do that off camera and decide which ones I'm going to reroll. I realized something obvious when I was examining these dice off camera. Actually, I've got these 2 maces here. So this is 2 points of damage. I can just forget this, trying to get this changing of face. I got my 2 points of damage right here. So, of course, I need the initiative to inflict that and be safe. There is, and this is, again, ambiguity in the rules. I still might want to re-roll. I just don't know whether I need to commit to doing that before we initiate combat. I'm not really clear on that. I was trying to ascertain that in the rules, and I don't know. I just don't know. So I'm going to say that I need to commit. The problem with doing a re-roll, so I'm not going to do a re-roll because I'm going to hope to get initiative and whatever. The problem with doing a re-roll is when I examine these dice, they have the risk of bringing in another face of a monster. So if I re-roll, for example, this die and it lands on the monster, then I really, not only did I not get a benefit, but I got a negative, because then I have to place it here and then I have to bring in a wandering monster, and I don't want to risk that. So I'm going to do this and keep this on the healing. I'm going to choose not to re-roll. I'm going to go with the blessings for the future, and now it's really just the issue of whether I can get initiative here or not, and let's just hope I do. So they rolled a 5, so I did. And I can inflict the 2 points of damage here from the cleric. Sorry about that. I cleaned that up. So I did that, and then the only thing remaining is this poison disease card, which is on the wizard and requires this hand to heal it. So I've got that, and I can do that, thereby resolving that. And I think this means the turn is over. I think this means it's the end of the round. I don't see anything else. There's nothing else out here. And what this means then is we have to clear everything off. So we're going to lose, what we were saving up. It doesn't really matter. We're going to clear all this off, and we lost the saving of that. I don't think we saved that round to round, but we were on the 2 here, so we can basically heal everybody up. Now, the wizard's at full health, but everybody can move up 2 health, which is really what we need. And we then move on to the beginning of the next turn. And the way we do this is we come to our card phase, we move forward, we see this means that we must pull in a corridor tile. And again, I'm not laying all these out, I just have them random, but in order of tile. So I'm going to pull the next corridor tile up and out, and I'm getting something with a trap, 2 monsters, and a treasure. Oh, I did not actually get my treasure from resolving this room. So let's see what we got. We got a potion of creation. Create any 2 character dice for use this round only. One-time use discard. Well, that's pretty awesome and excellent, and that will give us a bunch of choices. And choices are really what is at the heart of this game. And I just want to say something about the spells here and how this has changed with regard to the rules and the choices. The way that I have been playing, we need a spell book in order to cast spells, and we create the spells by matching up the dice to create what spells there are. And then when we cast the spell, we put the dice in regroup and move on. This method was changed a bit, and spell cards were introduced, which in effect allow you, the spell cards match up with the spells. And I'm actually pulling something from a level 2, but basically they would match up. So here's a recharge with a recharge. And here is the web spell with the web spell. So that instead of quote unquote tying up your dice on this spell book, when you roll them, you then can place a cube to indicate that you rolled the dice and start to create your attributes for the spell. And then when you have the 2 cubes, you pull the card and the card goes into your hand, and you can then use the dice for something else. I have not been playing that way, and the reason I haven't been playing that way is because, to me, in effect, what that does is it just, eventually you're going to roll all of these things. So you're just sort of waiting to put the cubes out and use the spells. The way that it originally was and the way that I'm continuing to play, you're forced in making choices. So for example, am I going to put down a magic hat here as opposed to using it here right now for a missile and thereby taking it out of my next reroll to kind of save up to get this web spell? The way the rules are rewritten, just the fact that I rolled a magic hat lets me say I got it and then also use, say, the magic hat to do a missile. To me, that's a little too easy. It's taking away a choice. And where I think this game really shines is the fact that the balance of the faces of each individual die and collectively the balance of the dice faces it makes you feel like you have a chance. It makes you feel like if you are thinking correctly about the different placement, you have a chance of maximizing your attack or maximizing your defense or maximizing, say, a spell or even saving up your blessings for something else. And I think that works really well. And I think that making it easier the way the spells are, for me, takes away some of the decision making and takes away a little bit of the fun. So I have not played that way, but that is how the rules were rewritten, I think, to encourage people to actually use spells by not tying up the dice. But personally, I think that having them tied up and forcing you to, be waiting around to get the right thing and the spell book, that makes sense. I mean, it's magic. It's going to be hard to do. It is a measure of my enjoyment of this game that the video has gone on so long already, and I keep wanting to just show you more about it. But I'm going to give you just some overall thoughts now. I'm going to start by saying that I own commercially produced games that are not as well developed as this one, I have paid money for components that are far inferior to these awesome custom dice that are really the heart of the game. They're the heart of the game sort of physically, and of course they're the heart of the game in terms of mechanics. They are just a pleasure to look at, to hold, to roll, to contemplate, and it's 100% success, I think, with this aspect of the game, and I really applaud the designer for his production quality on these dice. They're heavy, and the icons are clear, and it just, it makes you want to kind of keep going back to the game. The kind of generic dungeon crawl, you're moving through rooms and corridors, and I didn't even say this, but I guess it goes without saying in a way, you're trying to get to a boss at the end, the big monster at the end to eliminate, to succeed with a couple of characters remaining. I guess that's a little bit generic. Does it matter? It didn't matter to me. I think the core of this is really the dice placement and the balance that was achieved in terms of what the icons are and what the options are. It feels like there are enough choices. Again, with the spells, I think you need to retain the spell as tying up some of your dice, because without that, I think it's just a little too easy. But there are enough choices where you are doing some agonizing. I will say that in the play that I've done so far, I've played this a bunch, but the play that I've done so far, a lot of my decisions did seem to center on certain mechanics here with the cleric. Now, I don't know if that's just a function of the roles that I was getting or whether, in fact, there are more choices regarding that. I would say the cleric first, and then whether or not to save up for a spell. The icons in terms of the fighter, it was like I kept getting the sword, so I would use it. There wasn't a lot of choices for me going on necessarily with that. The thief a little bit more, because you need to typically use the thief hood to disarm traps. So sometimes there's a choice to decide whether you're going to use the faces of your dice to ignore a random monster, or to do that and take the damage of the traps until you can get rid of it. But overall, I felt like there were enough choices. Where I think the game is a little rough around the edges, a couple of things overall, the sort of minor points, but there are doors on certain cards, and I'll just show you one here. There's the door icon and the door here, but there's only one door card, so every door is the same, and it felt a little bit, I don't know, I think that needs a little richness to improve, because it just felt like a kind of other thing that was tacked on, and it didn't really feel that thematic to me. The other thing that I think was a teeny bit rough, and I didn't get into this in the video because I don't want to ruin the surprise. Part of the thing about a dungeon crawl is it's a surprise. You're looking for stuff, and you're finding treasures and whatnot, and you're having quests. And this is a dungeon tile that has a quest on it. The way the quests work is there are 9 available to you, but you're instructed to pull 4 of them at the beginning of the game. These are actually not the 4 I pulled. These are the 5 I didn't. But you sort of randomly pull 4 of them at the beginning of the game. If you get a quest card numbered, say, for example, 6, as I did, but you don't have that quest in your hand, you can't do it. And that was a little bit unnecessarily frustrating for me, because that happened to me twice actually in one game, and I didn't quite get that. I think with a dungeon crawl, the idea is you have some overall quest that you have in your pocket, or that you're trying to achieve in addition to just getting through the dungeon, I think, for me. So I wonder if there could be a different implementation there for that. And the last thing that I really felt missing was that all the treasures were indicated on the dungeon tiles by the treasure icon, but there was no rule in the game, or no spot in the game where you could possibly search for something. So there wasn't too much of a surprise element there. The random monsters that could come in, the wandering monster that could come in if you rolled these 2 icons, so that was a little bit of a surprise, because you were sort of waiting for it to happen potentially. Of course, now I can't find one of those icons, but it's a dungeon crawl, so here's one of them. You get one of those out, and you wonder, am I going to roll another one and have to deal with an additional monster? But you never got a chance to search for something, to see if there was something in the dungeon area that you were that wasn't actually on the tile. And I would have loved to have the opportunity to maybe use a facing of a die to search in some capacity. I would have liked to see that added in. Overall, as I said, this for me has been very enjoyable. I thank Joe for sending it to me, and I highly recommend it. There's a lot of, there's a lot of components. It's would be a little bit of a build, I think, to do P&P. Totally worth it to try to get your hands literally on these dice. It really makes the game just physically enjoyable and, viscerally enjoyable, and totally works thematically. So this is Dungeon Hack. It's a P&P game, and I thoroughly enjoyed it and hope that I conveyed some of that in this video. Thanks for watching.